What would you do if the only thing your father left you vanished from your desk? And what if the truth behind it revealed a betrayal deeper than you ever imagined and a secret that could change your life forever? The phone rang on a slow Tuesday afternoon while I was buried in quarterly reports, fluorescent lights buzzing above my cubicle in a Detroit high-rise. I barely looked at the screen, just another unknown number. Normally, I'd let it slide to voicemail, but for some reason I picked up. "Is this Amelia Chin?" the voice asked. Gruff, low, the kind of voice you instinctively brace for. "Yes." "Who's this?" "My name's Frank DeMarco. I own DeMarco's Pawn and Gold on Riverside. I believe I have something that belongs to you, a Rolex Submariner." My stomach twisted. That couldn't be right. "I have that watch," I said, opening the drawer beside me where I kept Dad's watch tucked in a cloth pouch every day I worked. The drawer was empty. My pulse skipped. "The watch. It's gone," I whispered. "I was afraid of that," Frank said quietly. "Look, I'd prefer not to talk over the phone. Can you come down to the shop? I left the office without logging out. Didn't even grab my lunch." My hands shook the entire ride. That watch wasn't just metal and gears. It was Dad. The only thing he left specifically to me before he died. A physical promise engraved with, "To my daughter Amelia, may time always be on your side. Love, Dad." He wore it every day through concrete, poor Sunday dinners, my 7th grade recital. Even when the chemo thinned his wrist, he kept it on until the very end. On the day he passed, he pressed it into my hand. "This is yours, Mia. Only yours." That was 3 years ago. Back then, it was just Mom and me, until she met Richard, and then Richard's son, Tyler, moved in with his shiny teeth, big business dreams, and a track record of financial disasters dressed up as startups. Tyler had never worked a real job, but he could pitch. God, could he pitch. Mom fell for it, Richard backed it, and I stayed quiet. DeMarco's Pawn was exactly the kind of place where stories went to die. A half-lit sign flickering above a dusty storefront squeezed between a vape shop and a payday loan place. It smelled like Lost Hope and WD-40. Frank DeMarco looked like a guy who'd seen every kind of lie. Square jaw, sleeveless vest, tattooed forearms, and a pinky ring that screamed old school. But when he saw me walk in, his face softened. "You're Amelia," he said. "You look like him." I nodded. "You knew my dad." He gave a nostalgic grunt. "He came in a few times. Construction guys always need tools. He was one of the honest ones, paid every loan on time, never tried to scam me." He disappeared into the back, returning with a worn leather box. Familiar, intimate. "This came in yesterday," he said, setting it on the glass counter. Guy said it was his to sell. Young, mid-20s. Said it was a gift from his dad, but when I opened it, I couldn't breathe. Inside sat the Rolex, my father's watch. Slightly scratched, smaller than I remembered, but unmistakably his. "I don't usually dig into backgrounds," Frank continued, "but this one didn't sit right. So I ran it through our system. Your dad pawned this watch exactly once 15 years ago. Paid back the loan in full within a month. $3,000. My head snapped up. 15 years ago, that's when I started at St. Mary's." Frank nodded. "Private school's not cheap, my guess. He needed cash for your uniforms, books, whatever wasn't covered by scholarship." He looked me dead in the eyes. "But that's not the real reason I called you." He reached for the watch and pressed something on the side. The back of it clicked open, a tiny hidden compartment I'd never noticed. Inside was a piece of paper folded impossibly small. "I didn't read it," Frank said. "Felt wrong. Figured if he hid it, it wasn't for just anyone." With trembling fingers, I unfolded the note. My father's handwriting stared back at me, sharp, neat, and unmistakably his. "Mia, if you're reading this, something's happened to the watch. Check the safe deposit box at First National, box 447. The key is in my toolbox inside the level. The watch is yours. But what's in that box is your future. Don't let anyone tell you different." Dad. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Frank cleared his throat. "You okay?" I looked up, dazed. "I need to buy the watch back." He shook his head. Guy who brought it in called himself Talish, said he needed capital for a startup. Talked about apps and synergy. But here's the thing. I never filed the paperwork. Technically, it's not even in our inventory yet. My mind was spinning. What do you mean? I mean, I've been in this business a long time. And I know when something smells wrong. That watch didn't belong to him. I can't prove it in court, but I trust my gut. He slid the watch across the counter toward me. Take it. It was never here. I stared at him. I can't. You're not stealing it, Mia. Your dad once helped me when my kid needed surgery and I couldn't pay rent. He did roofing for me at cost. Let me pay it off over 6 months. Never brought it up again. This is me settling my tab. My fingers curled around the leather box. It felt heavier than it ever had. I walked out into the cold with a plan forming in my head. The garage, the toolbox, the level. But first, I had questions that needed answers, and I knew exactly where to ask them. I pulled into the driveway faster than I should have, tires crunching over loose gravel. The familiar outline of the house felt colder than usual, smaller somehow. I stepped inside without knocking. Mom and Richard were in the kitchen, hunched over coffee mugs and what looked like bank statements. Their heads snapped up when I entered. I saw it instantly, that flicker of panic in Mom's eyes. Not surprise. Guilt. Mia, she said, trying to sound casual. What are you doing home? I didn't say a word. I walked to the counter, pulled the Rolex from my coat pocket, and set it down between us with a soft click. Silence stretched, long, thin, like wire pulled too tight. Mom blinked first. Where did I find the watch you stole from my desk? I said calmly. The one you pawned to fund Tyler's latest scam, the watch Dad gave me the night he died. Richard shifted, already playing mediator. Let's not be dramatic. I met his gaze. Oh, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being precise. Tyler broke into my room, took a dead man's watch, and pawned it for cash. That's theft. Grand larceny, actually. Mom's voice was shrill. We didn't break in. Tyler has a key. He lives here. I tilted my head. To my locked drawer, neither answered. I checked the security footage. I lied smoothly. Or should I say Frank checked. The pawn shop keeps recordings. Tyler used his real name, Real ID, sold the watch for $500. Richard chuckled nervously. Mia, please. Tyler needed capital. He has a partner, a plan. This startup is different. Different from the food truck. The cryptocurrency collapse. The coaching business with 0 clients, I asked. You're all willing to risk everything for his daydreams, but the only thing I ever asked for was to be left alone with what was mine. Mom stood, her hands trembling slightly. It's not like that. Tyler's trying to build a future. I cut her off. So was Dad. And you just sold the last piece of him. Her jaw clenched. You never saw the bigger picture. That watch was sitting in a drawer collecting dust. No, I said quietly. It was sitting in that drawer because I worked 10 hours a day to keep a roof over my head, because I wasn't depending on someone else's money to chase delusions. Richard tried to defuse. Let's talk this through reasonably. Fine, I said. Here's reasonable. You have 48 hours to return every penny Tyler got for that watch, or I file the police report. It's already written with Tyler's name on it. Frank saw everything. Richard's smirk dropped. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. You can't mean that, she whispered. Tyler could go to jail. Tyler committed a crime, I said. If there are consequences, that's not on me. She took a shaky step forward. After everything we've done for you, I stared at her. You mean letting me live here? I pay rent, above market rate, in fact. We're your family, Richard snapped. No, I replied. Dad was my family. The man who worked until his fingers bled. The man who left me something because he knew I'd need it. You're something else entirely. I turned and walked down the hall, heart pounding like a drum. I opened the garage door and flicked on the light. Dad's old toolbox was still there under the workbench, covered in dust, untouched. My hands were steady now. I lifted the lid. His Stanley level sat nestled inside just like I remembered. worn edges, faint paint smudges. The tool he taught me how to use when I was 8, checking if the bookshelves I made were even. I unscrewed the bubble chamber. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was the key. Small, silver, glinting like a promise. First National Bank was only 20 minutes away. I'd passed it 100 times growing up, never realizing my father had hidden a future inside its walls. The receptionist smiled politely, but when the branch manager appeared, her face softened as soon as I said my name. Your father. I remember him. Helped us with the roof after that storm in '98. Wouldn't take full payment. She led me to the vault where box 447 waited behind thick steel. I inserted the key. She turned hers. The box slid out. Inside were 3 items: a large manila envelope, a soft leather-bound journal, and a sealed letter with my name on it. I sat in the private room, heart pounding. Tore open the envelope. First inside were bearer bonds, neatly labeled. I scanned the totals. Over $100,000. I blinked. Couldn't even cry. Not yet. Then I picked up the letter and opened it, hands trembling. Mia. If you're here, then you found my little trick. Your mom doesn't know about this box. I opened it the day you were born, because I knew even then you were going to need something no one could take from you. The envelope holds bonds. Should be worth over 6 figures by now. The journal has all my client records, including debts that were never paid. Some of those guys owe thousands. You could collect, or not. That's your choice. But this isn't about money. This is about time. I wanted to give you time. Time to leave if you needed to. Time to breathe. Time to live without needing anyone else's permission. Your mom's not cruel, just loud. She respects ambition flash talkers. But you, like me, you were always quiet. And in her world, quiet means invisible. Never forget, Mia time is the only real currency. Don't let anyone steal yours. All my love, Dad, P.S. If Marcus is still around, the one who borrowed money and vanished, dump him. You deserve better. I laughed through a throat full of tears. Even now, Dad was still looking out for me. The hotel I checked into that night wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, mine. No one could knock on my door and guilt me into anything. I laid the leather journal on the desk, the pages thick with my father's handwriting, dates, materials, client names, and payments received or unpaid. I flipped toward the back and found it. Richardson Construction, amount due $15,000, date 1 month before his diagnosis, status unpaid. I stared at that entry for a long time. The name rang a bell. They were still operating, still winning city contracts. They probably thought my dad's death meant they could wipe the slate clean. They were wrong. The next morning, I searched for someone who could help. Her name was Diane Vasquez, an estate recovery attorney out of Ann Arbor, former litigator, reputation for collecting debts the dead left behind. When I showed her the journal, her eyes lit up. Your father kept impeccable records, she said, flipping pages like she was skimming a holy text. Signatures, invoices, job logs, all actionable. These aren't just notes, these are court-grade receipts. How fast can you move, I asked. The bonds can be liquidated immediately. As for the debts, give me 90 days and I'll have most of it in your account. Maybe all. I handed over the retainer and stood up. Do it. Before heading back to Mom's, I sat in the car for 10 full minutes. The air conditioning hummed. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. I had one more thing to do. Confrontation wasn't my style, but it was time. They were all in the living room when I walked in. Mom, Richard, and Tyler still pitching his nonsense like a junior TED Talk. The moment he saw me, he stopped mid-sentence. Amelia, he said, trying to charm. About the watch, save it, I said. I turned to Mom and Richard. I'm moving out. Today. What Mom blinked like I'd said I was joining the circus. Don't be ridiculous. Over a watch. No, I replied. Over a betrayal. Over you choosing them over me again and again. Over you letting them steal from me because you think I don't deserve what's mine. Where will you go? Richard asked, eyes darting, probably calculating how quickly they could rent out my room. That's not your concern anymore. Tyler stood up, palms out. Look, I'll pay you back. When the app takes off. No, I said flatly. You'll pay me back now. $8,500 plus interest. My lawyer will be in touch. Lawyer Mom paled. Mia, you can't be serious. I can, and I am. Mom's voice rose sharp and cold. Your father would be ashamed of you tearing apart this family over money. I looked at her long and hard. My father left me more than money. He left me a future. He left me a lesson. And he left me a watch you tried to erase from my life. You're overreacting. No, I've been underreacting my whole life. I packed quietly. It didn't take long. 2 suitcases, a laptop, a box of old photos. The Rolex went back on my wrist, ticking with purpose. As I loaded the last bag into the car, Mom followed me onto the porch. I hope it was worth it, she said coldly. Cutting us out like this. I turned and met her eyes for the last time. Dad once told me, the best time to stand up for yourself is the moment you realize you're being stood on. I'm not being stood on anymore. And I drove away. No music, no tears. Just the steady sound of my heartbeat and the ticking of the watch. The next few weeks moved faster than I expected. Diane, my lawyer, was relentless. She had letters drafted, certified notices sent, and subpoenas ready to go before I'd even unpacked in my new place. She didn't just chase the money they felt her breathing down their necks. Richardson Construction caved first. They paid the full $15,000 within 3 weeks probably to avoid a courtroom where their name could end up in local news. Then came 2 smaller companies, each one owed my dad a few thousand. Together, it added up. By week 6, I had over $43,000 recovered. Add that to the bearer bonds, which ended up cashing out at $127,000 thanks to years of accrued interest, and I was standing on firmer ground than I ever had in my life. I didn't tell Mom. I didn't tell anyone. But word spread. First, Richard called his number popping up like a ghost I'd buried. Hey, Mia, I was wondering if you could help out with a small loan. Just until Tyler's investment comes through, I hung up. Then the text from Mom. Mia, can we talk? You're being unfair. We're still family. I didn't respond, but I did send a photo. One single image, the police report for the stolen Rolex Tyler's name, highlighted in yellow. The silence that followed was louder than any apology could have been. Tyler's startup collapsed within 3 months. Turns out revolutionizing social media with blockchain was just a flashy way to burn through cash without creating anything at all. He spent half the money on branding a rented co-working space and an influencer who ghosted him after 2 TikToks. He ended up moving back into Richard's basement. According to whispers from a mutual cousin, he sold his laptop and gaming chair just to cover his car note. Meanwhile, I bought a modest but solid house in the neighborhood where Dad grew up, tree-lined streets, close to the old hardware store he used to love. The kind of house Dad would have called a place with bones. Nothing fancy, just mine. Every room I set up, I thought of him. The tools in the garage, the journal I kept in a locked drawer, the watch sitting on my nightstand ticking steady. A sound that had once made me feel like time was running out now reminded me it was finally mine. One afternoon, I found myself at the kitchen counter, thumbing through his journal again. On the back page, he had written a list titled, What I Wish for Mia. To be safe, to be seen, to never apologize for being quieter than the crowd, to know that she deserves more than survival, to remember that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means strength used wisely. I read that list a dozen times. Each line hit differently now, and I finally understood why he hid that message in the watch. He knew that someday someone would try to take from me the one thing I never bragged about but always cherished. He knew that people like Tyler, like Richard, like even my own mother would look at my quiet, steady life and think it meant I had nothing. They were wrong. The truth is, I had everything. I had time. Fall came early that year. Leaves burned red and gold along the sidewalk as I pulled up to Mom's house one final time, not to stay, not to visit, but to deliver closure. I walked up the steps with a manila envelope tucked under my arm. Inside were copies of the police report transaction records from DeMarco's and a formal letter from Diane. Tyler's theft in legal terms, the evidence, the value, the consequences. They were all in the living room again, just like the day I left. Mom stood when she saw me. Mia. I held up my hand. This isn't a conversation. Richard crossed his arms. What now? More accusations. I set the envelope on the coffee table. That's for Tyler. If he doesn't return the money within 10 business days, Diane files charges. The pawn shop has his ID on record, the transaction logged. He'll be charged with theft, maybe fraud. You're threatening your own family, Mom snapped. No, I said steady. I'm protecting what's mine. You could have made this right. You chose not to. Tyler wasn't there, probably hiding, or maybe too arrogant to believe I'd follow through. But I'd already learned silence only makes people think you're weak until it doesn't. Mom's voice shook. We were just trying to help him. I know, I replied. You've always helped him, even when he failed, especially when he failed. And me, you saw me as fine, as stable, as a resource. Richard scoffed. Oh, please, you've never gone without. I turned to him, because I worked for everything I had, including the damn watch you helped your son steal. He glared, but said nothing. You all acted like I was just a placeholder, a quiet daughter with no dreams, no fire. But you forgot something. Quiet doesn't mean invisible, and silence doesn't mean surrender. I turned to leave. Wait, Mom said behind me, her voice brittle. He's your brother. No, I said without turning. He's your son, and you made a choice. I walked out without looking back, the autumn wind lifting leaves around my feet like the world itself was ready to change. Later that week, Diane called. They wired the money, full amount, plus $500 in apology interest. She chuckled. Cowards always blink when you press them legally. I smiled. Thanks, Diane. Pleasure's mine. And Amelia, you did the right thing. I hung up and stared out the window of my new home, my home. I'd bought it with the bonds, the debt recoveries, and the strength my father planted in me long before he passed. The neighborhood kids played in the cul-de-sac. I heard laughter, a dog barking. Inside Dad's toolbox rested in the garage. The Stanley level still had the tiny scratch from the time I dropped it on our driveway as a kid. It was funny he never got mad about that. He just smiled and said, You drop something once it's a mistake. You drop it twice, it's a habit. I wasn't dropping anything anymore. Not my dignity, not my voice, and definitely not my future. Some nights I still open the watch's hidden compartment, not because I'm expecting a new message, but to remind myself it was real, that Dad thought ahead, that he knew the people around me better than I ever did, that he saw me, really saw me, even when my own mother didn't. The Rolex sits on my nightstand now, not in a drawer, not tucked away like a relic, but displayed respected mine. I kept the house simple. 2 bedrooms, a sunlit kitchen, hardwood floors with a soft creak that made it feel alive. I hung one photo on the hallway wall, me and Dad at the beach, both covered in sand, laughing like we had forever. I pass that photo every morning and it grounds me. Diane recovered every last dollar. The final total just under $175 or $1,000. Not life-changing in a billionaire way, but it bought me freedom, time, and peace. The exact things my father worked himself to the bone to give me. Tyler never reached out. His startup quietly dissolved, and according to a cousin, he's bouncing between side gigs now consulting for businesses that don't exist. Richard went quiet too, and Mom. She still sends cards. Birthday, Christmas. Once even an apology note thinly veiled as a just checking-in message. I never respond. Because I learned something powerful in all this. Just because people share your blood doesn't mean they share your values or your heart. Dad was the only one who ever looked at me and saw enough. Not something to fix, not someone to use. Just Amelia, the girl with quiet strength, the daughter with steady hands, the one who didn't need noise to prove her worth. I used part of the money to start something small, a scholarship fund for daughters of tradespeople. It's called the Watch Fund, named not for luxury but for legacy, for the time every father wishes he had more of, for the daughters who are always overlooked until they aren't. Because here's what I know now. Time is the only real currency we have, and I refuse to spend another second on people who think I owe them my silence, my loyalty, or my future. The Rolex still ticks, and so do I. Forward. Unapologetic. Free. Now it's your turn. Have you ever had something stolen from you, not just money or things, but trust? Have you ever stood up and reclaimed it? Tell your story below, and if this one hit close to home, subscribe and share, because some of us were never given a voice. We had to find it. And now that we have it, we're not staying quiet.